remembered the sound the door made when I closed it behind me. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft click, like the house itself didn't want to admit I was leaving. I stood there for a moment with my hand still on the handle. The paint was chipped where my thumb rested. I had meant to fix that months ago. I didn't. The children were behind me. Too quiet. They had learned somehow that quiet was safer. My youngest held my coat with 2 fingers, not pulling, just making sure I was still there. My oldest carried a backpack that wasn't full. It never really was. I didn't say anything. If I spoke, my voice might shake, and if it shook, I might stay. So I opened the door and stepped out into the cold. I wasn't always someone who left. I used to be someone who waited. I waited as a child for my father to come home in a better mood, for my mother to stop looking tired, for dinner to feel warm instead of stretched. Our house was small, but not poor in the way people imagine. We had food, we had walls. What we didn't have was rest. Everything felt borrowed. Time, silence, even laughter. When adults spoke, I learned to disappear a little, to sit still, to make myself useful without being noticed. I grew up thinking love was something you earned by not asking for too much. That lesson stayed with me. When I met him, he wasn't cruel. That's important. He wasn't cruel in the way stories warn you about. He was quiet, controlled, certain. He spoke like someone who expected to be believed. At first that felt like safety. He made decisions quickly. Chose restaurants, chose houses, chose words for me when I couldn't find them. I thought that meant he was strong. I didn't realize how much of myself I was slowly handing over. By the time I noticed, it already felt normal. The children came one by one, like soft interruptions to a life I hadn't questioned yet. I remember holding my first baby and thinking, I will be better than what I knew. I said it silently, like a promise whispered to myself. But promises are heavy things when you're tired. Nights blurred together. Days became routines instead of moments. He worked. I managed. That's what people said. Manage. As if love could be organized. There were no bruises, no shouting matches that neighbors heard. Just small erasures. My opinions met with sighs. My questions met with silence. My tiredness met with impatience. If I cried, he would say I was sensitive. If I stayed quiet, he would say I was distant. I learned there was no correct version of me. Only quieter ones. The children noticed before I did. Children always do. They learned which hours were gentle, which moods required softness. My oldest started asking permission for things that didn't need it. My youngest flinched at raised voices, even happy ones. I told myself it was temporary. Everything felt temporary when I didn't want to face it. The moment I decided to leave wasn't loud. It wasn't after a fight. It was a Tuesday morning. The sink was leaking again. I had placed a bowl underneath it days before. Water dripped into it slowly. Plink, plink, plink. I stood there holding a sponge, watching it fill. No one else noticed. No one ever did. Something in me finally understood that this was my life, always catching what leaked, always absorbing what spilled, and never being asked if I was full. That morning, my child asked, "Are you okay?" Not because something had happened, because nothing ever changed. That question broke something open. Not violently, gently, like a seam giving way. I didn't plan the leaving well. I wish I could say I did. There was no savings account with my name on it, no apartment waiting, no family nearby, just a decision that felt heavier than fear. I packed clothes quietly, not everything, only what we could carry. I left behind photograph, a plant I kept forgetting to water, a blanket that smelled like years. When we stepped outside, the air felt too big. The street looked the same as always. Cars passed, people walked dogs. Life didn't pause for us. That hurt more than I expected. We walked to the bus stop. I had checked the timetable 3 times. My hand shook as I counted coins. The children didn't ask where we were going. That hurt too, because it meant they already knew it wasn't home. The first night, we slept in a place that wasn't ours. A friend that hadn't spoken to in years opened her door without questions. The couch smelled like detergent. The room was quiet in a different way. Not tense, just empty. I lay awake listening to my children breathe. Their breaths sounded uneven, like they weren't sure yet if sleep was allowed. In the morning, I didn't know what to do. That sounds simple, but it wasn't. For years, my days had structure built around someone else. Now time stretched open, unshaped. I made toast, burned it, cried quietly while scraping it into the bin, then made more. We ate standing because sitting felt too permanent. I began learning what nowhere actually means. It doesn't mean sleeping outside. It means not knowing where your mail goes. It means counting groceries carefully. It means pretending calm while your mind runs numbers constantly. It means smiling at your children while wondering how long kindness lasts. I applied for jobs with gaps in my work history. I filled them with words like caregiving. I attended interviews with borrowed competence. Some people were polite, some looked past me. One asked if my situation would affect reliability. I nodded and said no, even though everything affected everything. At night, doubts came, not about leaving, about surviving. I wondered if I had traded one quiet struggle for another. But when I looked at my children sleeping without tension in their faces, I knew I couldn't go back. Peace, even thin peace, mattered. We moved again. Then again, boxes became normal. So did starting over. The children learned how to unpack quickly, how to ask where the bathroom was, how to adapt. That part hurt most. Children shouldn't be good at that. Some nights after they slept, I sat on the floor. No furniture yet, just carpet and thoughts. I missed parts of my old life. That truth surprised me. Not him, the familiarity, the idea of stability. Even when stability was painful. Leaving didn't erase love, it complicated it. I didn't feel brave. People called me that. I nodded, but bravery implies certainty. I had none. I was just moving forward because standing still felt worse. Months passed, slowly. Pain doesn't fade quickly. It loosens its grip, one finger at a time. We found small routines. Friday pasta, library afternoons, shared jokes that surprised us. Sometimes laughter arrived unexpectedly. Like light slipping through a crack, money was still tight, fear still visited, but silence changed shape. It became softer, less watchful, more like rest. One evening, my oldest said, "It's quieter here." Not accusing, not sad, just noticing. I said yes. It meant something different than before. I still don't know what the future looks like. I don't have a finished story. Some nights I worry. Some mornings I feel strong. Most days I simply move through hours carefully. But now, when I look at my children, I don't see tension in their shoulders. I see tiredness, normal tiredness, the kind that comes from living, not enduring. I left with my children and nowhere to go. That part is true, but I also left with something else. The chance to breathe without permission, the space to become quieter in a way that heals, not empty, just honest, and for now, that is enough.